This is Sabah Usmani, who is an analyst at Global Clean Air, which is an environmental defense fund. And so, can you tell us why did you choose to become an urban planner?
So I knew I was interested in cities from a pretty young age. I grew up kind of between Kathmandu, Nepal, New Delhi, and New York City, and also spent some time in Mumbai as well. And I think it was kind of this experience of growing up in these different mega cities that really kind of shaped my interest in cities and the built environment in general. So over the years, I was exposed to kind of what made these cities great, but also at times what made these cities incredibly frustrating. And so I was interested in understanding these systems and dynamics of and the complexities of cities. At the same time, in college, I became more and more interested in kind of the challenges of cities in this specific time of climate change. Cities are basically the major source of greenhouse gas emissions, and urban areas, especially in the global south, in India, are experiencing, as you know, the challenges of rapid urbanization, which leads to a lot of pressure on the existing infrastructure of the city, both from the population, but also like their vulnerability to climate related risks. So that's like sea level rise or extreme weather events. And also, kind of what we're experiencing now with coronavirus, cities are some of the front lines and hotspots of this crisis. So in college, I decided to major in civil engineering with a minor in architecture at Columbia University in New York to understand and develop some of the solutions for cities, their infrastructure, and also building and understand the design side as well through architecture. And then I kind of, after college, I moved to Mumbai to work as a sustainability manager at Mahindra Life Spaces, which is an urban development firm in Bombay, where I worked on reducing emissions of buildings and new greenfield developments across India. So for me, it was in this job that it was kind of reinforced that urban environments and cities are inherently, very complex systems. So when we study a specific discipline, like I did with civil engineering or architecture, we only kind of learn one lens of looking at the city and looking at city problems. So I realized that I wanted to kind of get a broader, much more comprehensive understanding of cities, especially urban environmental, like policy and planning side that I hadn't gotten before. So I moved back to the US and I did my master's in urban planning with a concentration in environmental policy and planning at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston. And there I got the opportunity to kind of incorporate all these other lenses and tools to understanding cities, like the policy side, economics, geospatial analysis, participatory planning, working with communities, and also focus on some of specific challenges of energy, housing, transportation, and even health to gain the understanding of both the physical infrastructure side, but also the social and cultural infrastructure of the city, like the communities, governments, real estate, and private sector as well. So at MIT, I also got an incredible research experience. I worked as a research fellow at the Tata Center for Design and Technology for 2 years, and I was able to lead a project on spatial planning of energy systems in rural and peri-urban North India in Uttar Pradesh. So I worked closely with, multiple departments of state and local government, with energy companies and academic institutions in India, and conducted kind of field work in sort of villages of Uttar Pradesh, looking at energy systems. So that's kind of an overview of my background and in urban planning and in environmental planning as well.
That's great to hear. And so, you currently work at Environmental Defense Fund, which is also known as EDF. And so, could you describe what the organization does?
Sure. Yeah. So having worked kind of in the energy and environmental planning space, I was interested in how planning impacts environmental health. So I got a job as a global clean air analyst at EDF. We are an international nonprofit organization working globally. We develop solutions to some of the most serious kind of environmental problems linking science, economics, law, and effective partnerships. So basically, in our essence, we are also like kind of an environmental advocacy organization using like data and science to raise awareness about key environmental problems and influence communities, governments, and private sector on what they can do to solve those problems. So we don't just focus on urban issues. We focus on a number of areas, including climate and energy, ecosystems, health, and oceans across many countries. So my work particularly is on air pollution. It's kind of at the intersection of the climate and energy and health areas. I think there's a key kind of need for advocacy in solving climate change to not just raise awareness, but facilitate more productive alliances and conversations between decision makers and communities for these pressing environmental problems that we have. You can be kind of a climate advocate at any level. You don't have to be in a climate, advocacy organization as a student or at any level. Really, you can be a climate advocate. So.
What is your role at the Environmental Defense Fund focused on?
So my role at EDF is really looking at air pollution. I work across a number of cities on air pollution. Currently, I'm focused on developing and executing strategies to scale air quality monitoring and pollution mitigation in cities, including looking at like clean and electric transportation as well. I work with a number of stakeholders like private sector companies, governments, community groups to use air quality data to achieve more targeted solutions for urban air pollution. So you're from Mumbai, you're aware of how bad pollution can be and how it's not really the same in every part of the city. So like South Bombay is not as polluted as, Shivaji Nagar. So one thing that we're really focused on is and we're using our research to highlight is kind of this disproportionate impact of air pollution on marginalized communities and low-income communities. So in the US, that's often minority neighborhoods and communities of color. That's like non-white people. But in other places, there could be other local minority minority communities. So this is, I think, particularly relevant during kind of environmental shock or crisis like COVID, where we see these health discrepancies exacerbated with minority communities experiencing kind of the brunt of the impact. Whether it's communities of color in the Bronx or how we see the impact on migrant workers in India. So in our project, we're trying to understand these disproportionate impacts through collecting hyper-local air pollution data. So that's like data at the city block level on the ground to bring attention to and prioritize and develop more targeted solutions for these pollution hotspots. So for this work, I work with a very multidisciplinary team of pollution scientists, public health professionals, and policy advisors. I think my background in urban planning here is especially relevant because solutions, solving these kind of complex problems is inherently like involves a number of disciplines, and problems don't exist within, neat disciplinary confines. So it's really important to work with people with different expertise and be willing to traverse lenses to develop more effective solutions for these kind of problems.
That's great to hear. And so thank you, Sabha. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely having you here.
Thank you. Great talking to you as well.